If you feel guilty for overeating yesterday, listen up. Being overly full doesn't mean that you failed or did anything wrong. It just means that you ate more than what was comfortable for your body in that moment. No big deal, but let's be curious about a few things. There are a lot of reasons why we might overeat, and if we can be curious about why it occurred, you can actually learn from the experience and be less likely to repeat it again in the future. But if you stay stuck in the shame spiral and beating yourself up and telling yourself what a loser you are, you're not going to learn anything, and there's a good chance that you'll turn to food to cope with those negative emotions. As a dietitian and an intuitive eating coach, the first thing I would be looking at is whether or not you had eaten enough food up until that point in the day. Because if we undereat or restrict leading up to a meal, then we are much more likely to overeat at that meal or to overeat late at night at the end of the day because your body is trying to get what it needed in terms of nourishment for the whole day. Another thing I'd be looking at is whether the food you were eating has some type of charm, which means is this a food that's extra special to you? Do you feel like this food has power over you? Do you feel like you can't stop eating it once you start? If we have those foods in our life, we are much more likely to overeat on them, but don't worry, you can decharm them. Go look for my decharming video on what that looks like. Third thing to be curious about is if you were having emotions or unmet needs outside of food at that moment. Were you using food as a distraction or a way to soothe or as a way to cope? Because if you had something else going on that you actually needed to be tending to, the food was then a way to avoid the emotions related to that situation. Here's a mantra for you: curiosity rather than judgment. And you don't need to punish yourself by eating less today. Listen to your body, honor what it needs. Follow for more intuitive eating content.